The monster roars, accusing Luli and Luna of being vile bugs who stole its child. Luli, looking unimpressed, glances at the raging creature and wonders if it's time to take it down, like it's just another item on his to-do list. Luna, always thinking ahead, knows that if they defeat this thing, it'll make a lot of progress on their quest. Luli agrees, but he reminds her that the risks are huge, so they have to be careful. Luna decides to focus on breaking through the monster's armor, while Luli will cover her. With a quick nod, they sprint forward, kicking up dust like they're in an action movie. In perfect sync, they jump into the air, heading straight for the monster, whose arms are already out like it's ready to grab them. Luna swings her sword, unleashing a star strike, while Luli drops to the ground, dodging the monster's heavy fists. He lands in the right spot and strikes with all his strength, sending sparks flying as his blow connects. The monster roars, clearly not a fan of Luli's handiwork. Luna tries to follow up with another star strike, but the tricky beast jumps up into a hole in the ceiling. Her sword hits the wall instead, leaving her a bit annoyed. Luli watches the monster retreat and realizes those holes are its escape routes. Once it's inside, chasing it down would be harder than trying to catch a greased-up pig. Suddenly, the ground starts shaking. Luna, wide-eyed, suspects the monster is pulling off some sort of trick. Luli scans the area, and the tremors get stronger. He quickly figures out that the danger is coming from below. Without wasting a second, they both leap out of the way just as the monster's sharp tail bursts out of the ground like some kind of nightmarish surprise. They manage to dodge the attack, landing nearby as the tail swings around, smashing everything in sight. Luli takes a deep breath, realizing that this monster is fast, way too fast. Dodging is all well and good, but finding the right moment to strike back is going to take some serious focus and maybe a little luck. Luna quickly suggests they split up, figuring that if one attacks, the other can land a counterstrike. Luli agrees without hesitation, knowing that her strategy makes sense. Just as they're about to move, the ground begins to tremble again. This earthquake has clearly overstayed its welcome. Rocks bounce and rattle, and Luna, noticing the vibrations getting stronger near her, realizes the monster is heading her way. A moment later, its sharp, curled tail bursts from the ground, pinning Luna against the wall. But because she's not one to go down that easily, she manages to block the worst of it. Luli, seeing the situation, charges toward the beast. He knows that a regular attack won't do the trick here. Calculating every move, the speed, timing, even the delay between swings, he strikes at just the right moment. With a sharp slice, he severs the tail at its base, green blood spraying everywhere like a particularly messy watermelon. The monster retreats deeper into its hole, letting out pain screams that echo through the cavern, while Luna, now free, lands safely on the ground. The monster isn't done yet. Crawling back out of the hole, it lets out an ear-splitting scream, its eyes glowing red with rage. Luli braces himself and warns Luna to stay on guard, but the monster suddenly unleashes a burst of power so intense it causes the earth to crack beneath their feet. Chunks of solid ground fly into the air. Luli slices through one with his blade like it's nothing, but Luna isn't so lucky. A flying rock smacks her right on the head, sending her tumbling down. Luli catches her just in time and checks if she's okay. He knows that one wrong move against this monster could be their last. Luli instructs Luna to regain her strength while he takes over, facing the beast head-on. The monster readies itself for another attack, and Luna steps aside to drink a healing potion. Just as the monster's fists crash into the ground, Luli swings his blades, but the monster isn't going down easily. It slams its hands down again, opening up a new crack that forces both Luli and Luna to retreat. The monster roars in fury, a green aura swirling around it as the ground begins to crack once more. Without missing a beat, Luli and Luna leap into action, jumping into the air and rushing toward their target. The moment they land their strikes, an explosion rocks the cavern, sending sparks of every color flying through the dust and smoke. This battle seems endless, and before they know it, 2 hours have passed. Exhausted, Luli and Luna stand on shaky ground, catching their breath. Luna, barely able to believe it, wonders aloud why the monster is still alive, especially with all the bleeding it's doing. Luli, panting, suggests they wait and see what happens next. He looks up at the creature, noting that several of its arms are missing and the rest of its massive form is trembling. He can tell the monster is at its limit, though it sure took its sweet time getting there. The monster, as if to rub salt in the wound, taunts them about limits, calling Luli an arrogant cockroach. It casually reaches out with its left hand, plucking a nearby egg from the wall like it's picking a snack. Without a second thought, it pops the egg into its mouth, chomping down. Luna's eyes widen and she can't help but wonder out loud. Did this thing just eat its own egg? Luli's nerves kick into overdrive, immediately realizing that this is a disaster in the making. Sure enough, after munching on the egg, the monster's tail, arms, and every single wound on its body magically heal. It's back to full strength as if the last 2 hours of battle never happened. Luna is taken aback, asking if it's really recovered completely. The monster's eyes glow an ominous red as it confirms with a smirk that this is just the start of their nightmare. Because of course things weren't bad enough already. Leaning forward with a sinister grin, the monster unleashes its demon cage skill. An energy wave swirling with green and purple bursts out toward them, a visual mix that would be beautiful if it wasn't also trying to kill them. Luli, nervous but quick thinking, reaches out a hand to Luna, telling her to brace herself and keep her eyes open. Clearly, there's no blinking in the face of despair. In an instant, Luli finds himself plunged deep into the recesses of his mind. Outside a small coffee shop, people walk by, their voices a gentle hum in the background. Inside, the clatter of cups and the smell of fresh coffee fill the air as a girl brings a steaming cup to the table. The pessimistic Luli, dressed sharply in a button-down shirt, thanks her and takes the cup, though his weary expression betrays him. Sitting next to him is the optimistic Luli, looking more relaxed. The pessimistic version rubs the bridge of his nose, lifting the aromatic coffee to his face and mutters that deep down he knows the answer to everything troubling him. The optimistic Luli counters with a hopeful thought, so long as there's even a sliver of opportunity, he shouldn't give up. The pessimistic Luli, now reading a book with his coffee left untouched on the table, reflects on the passage of time, the disappearance of his elder brother, his entry into Destiny Corporation, and the start of this game. If his brother was truly okay, why hadn't there been a single word from him? The optimistic Luli looks down for a moment, thinking that the journey wasn't in vain. At least now he has a lead on infernal purgatory from Wu Yu. But the pessimistic Luli, now clearly agitated, slams the magazine shut in frustration. He questions how long he can keep lying to himself. The game has nearly driven him mad, and he knows better than anyone that it's all just lines of code and data. His brother's legacy is what matters. Chasing these digital fantasies is a waste of time. The optimistic Luli remains silent, his eyes closed. The pessimistic version strides over, gripping his shoulders and urging him to wake up. He reminds him not to forget his real dreams, like the orphanage they've always wanted to build, where children could feel at home. That's what you should be doing, not drowning in this game world. Suddenly, the optimistic Luli rises to his feet, grabbing the pessimistic version by the throat and lifting him off the ground. Shocked, the pessimistic Luli grabs at his hands in a desperate attempt to break free. The optimistic Luli frowns. He's had enough of this illusion. This other version of him is nothing more than a demon created by the monster's twisted tricks. Just then, the world around him begins to crack and shatter like fragile glass. The pessimistic Luli, with a smirk, asks whether Luli is truly sure. Maybe this illusion is the reality he's afraid to face. The cracks deepen, and the world crumbles into pieces. The real Luli, standing firm, asks himself the real question. How can he protect more people if he can't even protect those closest to him? He reflects on the dream he's held onto for so long, a vision of an orphanage, not just any orphanage, but one that would be run by 3 people, himself and his 2 brothers. It was meant to be a place where they'd all come together, creating a home for those without one. Just then, Luli snaps awake, his eyes shooting open. The dream dissolves, and he's greeted by the sight of a very surprised monster, holding both him and Luna in its massive hands. Clearly, it wasn't expecting either of them to wake up from its nightmare cage so quickly. Wasting no time, Luli swiftly slices off the monster's fingers, freeing both himself and Luna. He catches her in his arms and gracefully lands on the ground. The monster, screaming in pain, can't believe its eyes. How did this human break free from its cage of nightmares so fast? It howls, but Luli knows the answer. It's not just about breaking free. It's about having something real to fight for. Luli carefully places Luna on the ground and hands her a level 30 illusion-breaking potion. The moment the potion touches her lips, she jolts awake, eyes brimming with tears, as if she just called out for her mother in her sleep. No time to dwell on the emotional wake-up, though, because the monster isn't waiting around. It crawls closer, rambling on about how peaceful it would be to just die in a world that isn't real. Talk about a motivational speaker. Luli and Luna spin around, glaring at the beast with a shared look that screams, "Not today." Without missing a beat, they both charge at it, forcing the monster to retreat. Luna, with a fierce determination, dashes forward, her sword lighting up the air with blue sparks. Right beside her, Luli charges with his blade, leaving behind streaks of black and red. They leap into the air together, raining down attacks on the monster, who hastily covers his head like it's getting pelted with hailstones. The monster, in disbelief, wonders why they're fighting harder now than they were before escaping the nightmare cage. Clearly, underestimating this duo was a mistake. Realizing it's time to back off, the monster starts sliding along the ground, trying to put some distance between itself and the 2 furious warriors. But Luli and Luna aren't letting him off the hook that easily. The monster stretches out a hand toward the wall, thinking it can grab another egg for a quick snack. But Luna, eyes narrowing, has none of it. She swings her sword with the full moon technique, slicing through the egg and the monster's fingers, like it's slicing through butter. The monster's nerves skyrocket, and for the first time it seems genuinely worried. Cursing his luck, a monster contemplates retreating. But before it can even finish the thought, Luli appears behind him like a shadow, ready to end things. The monster doesn't even get a chance to react. With a swift jump and a sharp swing of his blade, Luli slices off the monster's head. Bright green blood sprays everywhere, and the monster's body crumples to the ground, creating a growing pool of goo beneath it. A satisfying chime sounds as Luli receives 999 points for his efforts. He and Luna, both still catching their breath, clap their hands in victory. Luna remarks that the beast is finally defeated. Luli, feeling a little guilty, apologizes for having all the points. They were supposed to land the final blow together. But Luna just shrugs it off with a smirk, saying that if the monster had gotten away, they wouldn't have earned anything at all. As they make their way toward the exit, Luli remarks that with only 2 days left in the 7-day event, he'll help Luna rack up points as quickly as possible. Luna, always composed, assures him she's not too worried, but agrees that they should definitely get out of there fast. Unfortunately, peace doesn't seem to be on the agenda today. Suddenly, a voice echoes from behind them, from the direction of the monster's corpse. The voice, menacing and mocking, questions if they really thought it would end so easily. They both whirl around, and Luna, alarmed, asks if the monster is somehow still alive. Luli, feeling a sudden surge of nerves, insists that can't be possible. After all, his points were already transferred. Yet the voice is unmistakable. Weapons drawn, Luli confirms that the sound is indeed coming from the monster's remains. Luna's sharp eyes catch something strange. She points out that something is trying to break through the monster's stomach. Sure enough, its bloated belly starts to shift, a series of unsettling rustles and knocks coming from inside, like some sort of twisted piñata. Then, with a grotesque rip, a hand bursts through the flesh. A new creature emerges, more human-like in appearance, but just as terrifying, complete with several pairs of arms. This fresh horror climbs out of the monster's body, laughing with dark glee, asking who had the audacity to kill its former host. Finally free, the new monster's joy quickly evaporates when it notices Luli and Luna standing in front of him. His grin fades as he demands to know if they were the ones responsible. Before Luna can even respond, the creature is already upon her, moving with terrifying speed. It strikes her with a powerful kick, sending her flying backward, crashing into the wall with enough force to raise a cloud of dust. The roar from the impact echoes through the cavern. Without wasting a second, Luli rushes in, blade flashing in his hand. He strikes, but the monster casually blocks the blow with one of its many arms. Bright sparks fly from the impact, but Luli can't catch a break. The monster opens its mouth unnaturally wide, revealing a clot of green blood that quickly forms. Before Luli can react, the creature spits it out with lightning speed. The toxic projectile slams into him, pinning him hard against the wall, the acidic blood burning as it holds him in place. Things have clearly gone from bad to worse, again. Luli crashes hard against the wall, green blood oozing over his body like some toxic slime. The monster, now boasting a terrifying 1998 points, folds one pair of arms across its chest, while stretching the others upward, like it's taking part in some bizarre victory pose. It sarcastically asks why they greet him so poorly. They are too bad, and if they killed the other monster, then it totally deserved to die. Debris and dust rain down from the ceiling, but the monster doesn't get the dramatic reaction it seems to crave. Growing impatient, it clears its ear with a finger, sarcastically wondering how long Luli and Luna plan on playing dead. As if on cue, a chunk of the wall crashes down right in front of him, followed by a flurry of stones pelting him from all sides. The monster, unfazed, swings its arms wildly, shattering the stones into smaller pieces like it's batting away a swarm of mosquitoes. Meanwhile, Luna rushes forward, her blade flashing as she hurls stones at the creature. From the other side, Luli mirrors her attack, throwing stones as well. The monster, busy deflecting the barrage, doesn't notice them closing in. Just as they prepare to strike, the creature surprises them by grabbing their weapons with one hand, stopping their attack cold. Shocked, they exchange a glance, and Luna can't help but ask, did he really just stop them with one hand? With a bored sigh, the monster flings them in opposite directions as if tossing away old toys. Stretching dramatically, he complains in a drawn-out voice that they're boring. In fact, they've lost his interest entirely, but because he's feeling generous, he'll give them one last shot at attacking him. As the monster continues his arrogant rambling, Luli and Luna exchange silent gestures, communicating their next move. The monster, oblivious to their plan, comments that the will to live is the best seasoning for a corpse. Luna, fully focused, takes a deep breath and charges forward, her sword flashing as she swings. At the same time, Luli circles around to the other side. Luna halts just long enough to send her moon wheel slicing through the air toward the monster. The glowing wheel is aimed perfectly, but the creature easily ducks, letting it fly harmlessly overhead. With a smug grin, he taunts them, asking if that's really all they've got. But just as he turns toward Luna, confident in her impending doom, the moon wheel suddenly shifts direction. The monster hears the sharp whistle of wind behind him and turns just in time to see the wheel barreling toward him. He raises his arms to block the attack, and though the pressure from the impact pushes him back, he manages to hold his ground and redirect the blow upwards. At that exact moment, Luli is already on him. The monster, realizing too late, mutters something about how the real threat was the person behind him all along. Makes sense, he admits, but it's a little too late for realizations. This time, when he tries to spit at Luli, the warrior is ready. Defending himself, Luli stands firm and with a flash in his eyes, uses his backstab technique. In a blink, he's behind the monster, slashing a deep gash across its back. Green blood gushes from the wound, and the monster lets out a deafening scream before losing its balance. Staggering, the once mighty creature begins to fall. Luna feels a rush of excitement, thinking their plan worked perfectly. But just as the monster is falling with drops of his blood still suspended in the air, he casually snaps his fingers. Instantly, the nearest egg cracks open and the liquid inside flows straight toward him, healing all his wounds in the blink of an eye. Fully recovered, he smugly comments that their little combination was pretty good, almost as if he's giving them a score. If he were that old man, maybe he'd actually have the upper hand. Luna, putting two and two together, suddenly realizes the monster can use the eggs to heal himself from a distance. As long as those eggs are scattered around, he's basically got unlimited lives, a bit like playing a video game with cheat codes. The monster points a finger at them, almost as if accusing them of teamwork, and remarks on how well they cooperate. The monster, with a wicked grin, explains that while they are weak on their own, together they manage to hurt him. Not bad, he admits, but it's time to break up the team. He announces that their next attack will be their last together. He wants to split them up, so they can experience true despair and pain, one-on-one. Immediately after this declaration, the monster splits into two bodies and charges at both Luna and Lu Li. Explosions echo through the air, dust swirls, and the monsters launch a barrage of relentless attacks. Lu Li realizes that though the monster's power has decreased after splitting, the fight is still no walk in the park. He manages to block one of the creature's blows, but glances over just in time to see Luna miss her block and get thrown back. The monster chases after her, and Lu Li's instinct kicks in as he calls out to her, his voice full of concern. Luna, of course being Luna, shouts back for him to stop worrying about her and focus on himself. The monster, ever the opportunist, mocks Lu Li, wondering how he finds time to think about anyone else in the heat of battle. With a sharp swing, the monster lands a heavy blow that sends Lu Li flying backward. Just as Lu Li hits the ground, a strange grin forms on his face. The monster, momentarily stunned, wonders if it's his imagination or is Lu Li actually laughing after getting thrown across the battlefield. Lu Li seizes the moment to activate his hunting scourge blade, causing all the surrounding eggs to shatter in an instant. Without missing a beat, he continues launching rapid combo attacks on the remaining eggs, breaking as many as possible. Meanwhile, the monster stands there, watching the chaos with a smug smile, casually remarking that he still has plenty of eggs left. He seems confident, telling Lu Li that his efforts are pointless, suggesting he should just give up and become a snack. But as the monster observes more closely, a look of confusion crosses his face. With each blow, Lu Li's powers are constantly increasing. Something is definitely off. The more Lu Li smashes those eggs, his destructive abilities become more lethal. The monster, now in a full-blown panic, lunges at Lu Li, who's still focused on smashing every egg in sight. The monster spits venomously at Lu Li and swings his hand in a wild attempt to stop the onslaught, but Lu Li is prepared. He blocks the blow. Suddenly, a dome of energy begins to form around them, growing in size with alarming speed, and just as the tension hits its peak, a massive explosion erupts, cracking the ground beneath their feet and sending clouds of dust and ash swirling into the air. The monster, clearly shaken, admits that he didn't expect Lu Li to have such a powerful ace hidden up his sleeve. Lu Li, not wasting a second, glares at the monster, frowning in frustration. He wonders how this creature is still alive. He quickly downs a skill recovery potion, knowing he has to finish this before the monster can fully recover. Without hesitation, he prepares to use the hunting scourge blade again, but the monster, now catching on to his plan, warns him not to even think about it. Bright green sparks crackle around the monster, and then with a sudden snap, he opens his eyes and activates his skill. Almost immediately, the eggs around them begin to crack. Just then, a monster reaches out from an egg and grabs Luli's sword mid-swing, and before Luli can fully process what's happening, more eggs shatter and a horde of monsters starts pouring out. They crawl across the walls, hang from the ceiling. Suddenly, it feels like the entire room is alive with writhing creatures, all surging toward Luli from every direction. The monster, enjoying the chaos, looks down at Luli with a twisted grin, remarking how close he came to killing him. It's such a pity, he muses, that Luli no longer has a chance. With hordes of monsters surrounding him, Luli fights desperately, swinging his sword in all directions as he tries to fend off the attacks. He briefly locks eyes with the main monster, who is busy laughing and healing his wounds as though it's all just a game. The monster casually mentions that this skill of Luli is not bad, but if he interrupts them at just the right time, they don't do much damage. With that, the monster settles in, ready to enjoy what he calls a spectacle, as Luli fights his way through 1,000 enemies. But Luli isn't one to give up. Surrounded by enemies, he swings his sword again and again, cutting down monsters with every blow, refusing to let the overwhelming odds crush him. If this is the terrible dance the monster wanted, then Luli is more than ready to perform it, only he plans to be the last one standing. Meanwhile, Luna is locked in battle with other clone of monster in the depths of the cave. They soar over the water, exchanging a flurry of blows. Luna deflects several of his strikes with impressive speed. The clone isn't letting up. The cave echoes with the clash of their weapons and the splashes of water beneath them. At one point, Luna missteps, leaving herself open. The clone delivers a crushing punch to her stomach, sending her flying backward. She crashes into the wall with a painful roar, the impact so hard that it forces blood to her throat, making her cough violently. Staggering down from the wall, she drops to one knee, momentarily winded. The monster clone, standing on the opposite shore of the lake, looks at her with clear disappointment. He remarks how utterly boring this fight has become. He separated her from Luli, and that she doesn't even seem capable of putting up a proper fight. Nothing is more frustrating to him than prey that can't fight back. Luna, despite her condition, isn't about to let his words slide. She responds that it's not a matter of lacking the ability to fight back. Even though they're on different sides of this battle, she offers her sincere condolences for making him lose his mother just as he was born. Her words catch the monster clone completely off guard. For a moment he's stunned, then bursts out laughing, clutching his stomach as if Luna had just told the most ridiculous joke he's ever heard. Through his laughter, the monster mockingly asks if Luna's tactic is to make him laugh to death with her comments. He could barely contain his amusement, questioning if she truly believes what she said. Luna, unfazed, repeats her sentiment, but this only makes the monster laugh harder. He wipes away fake tears, calling her a piece of trash for even pretending to feel guilty about fighting him or the old man. With a dramatic sigh, he decides that purely for the sake of her comedy, he'll make an exception and share a few survival tips. With a twisted grin, the monster explains that from the moment they hatch, his kind competes with their mother's body. The mother can eat her own eggs at any time to replenish her strength. Similarly, the stronger offspring can eat the mother to become even more powerful. He licks his lips in a grotesque manner, admitting he didn't eat his own mother, because they both were capable of ending her life. But now, if he devours both Luna and Luli, it would be healthier for him. Luna, still holding her ground despite the fear creeping in, murmurs the word eat. The monster, with a wicked smile, points a finger at her, asking if she's ever eaten anything like that. He then casually extends his hand, releasing streams of green and purple energy in her direction, telling her that she seems very excited, and what if he let her experience something like that? Panic grips Luna as she realizes what's coming. Fear overtakes her, and she pleads that the monster stop, but he only grins wider. He unleashes his demon cage skill, and a suffocating wave of energy surrounds her. Luna, overwhelmed, covers her ears and screams, her mind drowning in the terror of the monster's twisted power. Luli hears Luna's terrified scream, and a wave of worry floods him. A mountain of monster corpses has already piled up beneath his feet, and with no new enemies approaching for a brief moment, he takes the opportunity to catch his breath. Meanwhile, the main monster yawns lazily, remarking that he's so bored he could fall asleep. Turning to the horde of monsters still lurking, he commands them to stop fooling around and finally kill Luli already. At the monster's command, the entire horde speeds up, rushing toward Luli with frightening speed. As they close in, Luli slashes through them one by one, but he can't help thinking that they're getting faster. More and more of them climb the mountain of corpses, and he swings his blade, fending them off. Just as the overwhelming mass of monsters jumps on him all at once, an idea strikes him. Blocking the nearest monster's attack, Luli braces himself for the inevitable onslaught. A split second later, they swarm him, burying him under a pile of writhing bodies. A piece of his cloak tears away, fluttering to the side as the swarm completely envelops him. For a brief moment, it looks as though he's been defeated. But then the system chimes in, congratulating him on his promotion to level 30. His omniscient bracelet detects that his level has increased and his equipment quality has been upgraded to epic level. To his surprise, he also unlocks a random skill, Shadow Clone. With this ability, Lu Li can turn his shadow into a clone that fights alongside him, inheriting 80% of his attributes and able to use his skills and items. The system also grants him an exclusive skill, Shadow Substitution, which allows his clone to switch positions with him within a 500-meter radius. The recharge time is 30 minutes. The main monster is still waiting, grows increasingly impatient. His hunger getting the better of him, he orders the others to stop messing around and finally kill Lu Li. Tired of waiting, he climbs atop the mountain of corpses and kicks away the lesser monsters, eager to inspect his supposed victory. The horde parts, kneeling as if they're about to present him with a prize, but instead of Lu Li, he's greeted by nothing more than a bloody cloak. The monster freezes in place, confusion spreading across his face as he asks, "Where's the man?" Furious, he grabs two of the nearest monsters by their necks and demands to know which one dared to steal his food. The monsters, now panicking, let out strange apologetic sounds, but the monster shows no mercy. He crushes the heads of the two he's holding and roars, asking if the rest are planning a rebellion against him. The remaining monsters, fearing his wrath, begin scrambling up the mountain of corpses toward their master, but something is off. One figure is moving in the opposite direction. Lu Li's shadow clone, blending perfectly into the shadows, begins slicing through the horde with deadly precision. As the clone advances, Lu Li uses the hunting scourge blade, wiping out waves of monsters with red flashes of his blade cutting through the darkness. The main monster watches in disbelief, exclaiming in horror that Lu Li isn't dead after all. Panic starts to creep in as the monster realizes his position has gone from dominance to desperation. He orders the remaining monsters to kill Lu Li immediately, now nervous and unsure if he can even withstand the relentless attacks himself. But it's too late. Lu Li, swinging his blade with deadly focus, unleashes blow after blow, filling the cave with flashes of red as he cuts down his enemies. From his perch atop the mountain of corpses, a once confident monster is frozen, unsure what to do next, watching helplessly as the tide of battle turns against him. Meanwhile, on the surface of the lake, everything is calm, eerily calm. But in true dramatic fashion, a bright stream of red energy suddenly erupts from under the water, shooting straight into the sky like the universe's most aggressive fountain show. Beneath all this chaos, Lu Li and his shadow clone team up in perfect synchronization, attacking the main monster with precision. In mere moments, they slice its body into several pieces, turning the once threatening foe into a jigsaw puzzle that nobody wants to put together. At the monster's final moments, its thoughts scramble in disbelief. How is this even possible? Did that garbage really manage to kill me? It tries to rationalize the situation, convincing itself that this was all just a fluke, pure dumb luck on Lu Li's part. Everything's fine, it tells itself, clinging to the idea that it had used the cloning technique. As long as there's a clone, the monster can split and regenerate, so they'll never truly kill him. Or so it thinks. At that exact moment, however, the clone, his safety net, crashes to its knees in defeat. Two of its pairs of hands are sliced off, leaving only the remaining ones, which it folds in prayer like a monster suddenly attending a very desperate church service. In a final, groveling plea, the clone begs Luna for forgiveness. It apologizes for its arrogance and ignorance, bowing its head so hard that its forehead slams into the ground. It promises her eternal loyalty, swearing to serve her as a faithful slave for life. Luna, hovering gracefully in the air, glances at her hand casually, noting that this isn't so bad. The groveling clone calls her a goddess, showering her with thanks for her supposed mercy. It promises that following her will be the greatest honor of its life, and it will spend every waking moment proving it. But Luna isn't even talking to him. She's in a world of her own, one side of her body painted black, the other white, with one of her eyes glowing brightly like a star. The dark side of Luna, with a cold and unimpressed look, glances down at the groveling monster. Annoyed, she remarks that he's being far too noisy and wonders aloud who even gave him permission to speak. Realizing that his plea for mercy has fallen on deaf ears, or, more accurately, dark and dangerous ears, the monster's eyes widen in fear. His bravado crumbles completely, and he starts to cry softly, begging her in a shaky voice not to do this. But Luna's decision is final. A black crescent moon suddenly forms under the cave ceiling, glowing ominously. Without a second thought, she swings her blade sharply. The arc of her strike is precise and swift, slicing cleanly through the upper part of the monster's body. Green blood bursts from the wound, spraying in all directions as the monster's remains slump to the ground. The system chimes in with a notification. The certificate collection event has been completed. All warriors are now instructed to gather at the central gate. As the system directed, all the warriors gathered at the central gate of the lower city, waiting for further instructions. Some looked utterly exhausted, having collected only 100 of 300 certificates, and were now catching their breath. The girl from the group who had barely managed 100 certificates sighed with relief, saying how glad she was that it was finally over. Her friend, equally worn out, agreed, muttering that the whole event had been way too difficult. Nearby, another player, proudly holding 200 certificates, patted his friend on the back, boasting that he'd actually racked up over 350 points and was confident he'd make it into the top 100. His friend, slightly embarrassed by the boasting, whispered for him to quiet down, calling it a modest result. But the grin on the player's face suggested he didn't quite share that modesty. Meanwhile, not far from the gate, Afi, Chili, and her perverted older sister were seated at a table. The pervert sister, in true dramatic fashion, slammed her palm onto the table with such force that the surface immediately cracked, making the others flinch. Her eyes narrowed as she declared that something wasn't right. Both Afi and Chili exchanged confused glances, startled by the sudden outburst. The perverted sister pointed accusingly at them, saying the problem was with the two of them, though the exact problem remained a mystery. Chili, trying to calm the situation, stood up from her tree stump seat and said she would go gather information about Afi's older brother, sensing it was the best way to distract her unpredictable sister. Afi nodded, appreciating the effort to smooth things over. As Chili prepared to leave, the pervert sister, undeterred, turned her attention to Afi. She pressed him for details about his brother, asking if he knew who had harmed him. Hearing this, Afi becomes visibly nervous, his voice shaking as he asks whether his brother was harmed. The perverted woman sighs, a dramatic flare in her tone, and admits that it was all her fault. She failed to protect him properly. His brother, she explains, was ambushed and poisoned while searching for her. Afi, refusing to believe it, immediately denies the possibility, insisting that no one could defeat his brother. Chili, observing the situation, shoots him a knowing look. She quietly mentions that her sister's intuition, weirdly enough, tends to be spot on. The perverted sister, never missing a chance to turn up the theatrics, places her hands heavily on Afi's shoulders. She smiles and tells him that he's right. Any man she chooses must truly be exceptional. The weight of her hands cracks Afi's poor shoulders, and he winces in pain, silently begging his brother to come rescue him from this awkward embrace. As if on cue, a cough interrupts the scene. Luli approaches from behind, carrying Luna on his back, and calls Afi's name, slightly confused by the situation. Afi turns around immediately, his face lighting up with joy as he calls out to Luli. Meanwhile, Chili's elder sister, always eager to add her own twist, joyfully calls Luli her husband. Chili, beyond exhausted by her sister's antics, covers her face with her hand and mutters that they are not nearly that close. Luna, peeking over Luli's shoulder, asks to be put down, assuring him that she's fine now. Luli agrees but warns her not to push herself too hard. As soon as Chili's older sister spots Luna on Luli's back, her mood sours instantly. Her expression shifts from joyful to downright furious, and without missing a beat, she storms toward him, clearly displeased, her voice sharp as she calls out to them. Chili, already accustomed to damage control, quickly runs after her sister, pleading for her to calm down and not get so worked up. Afi also rushes to intervene, suggesting that they should probably talk things over more calmly. Luna, standing behind Luli, coughs softly to break the tension, clearly sensing the awkwardness that's about to unfold. Chili's perverted sister strides right up to Luli, bends down to lock eyes with him, and announces in a very serious tone that he should remember her name. Huojiao, which she adds means succulent pepper, because apparently even names need a spicy backstory. She then shyly looks away, flashing a coy smile, and proclaims herself as his future wife, his one and only true destiny. Luli, caught completely off guard, instinctively pulls back, unsure of how to respond to such boldness. Luna, meanwhile, covers her mouth in shock, trying her best not to burst out laughing. Chili, standing off to the side, lets out a long, exasperated sigh. This was all way too familiar for her. Before the situation could get any weirder, a scream with flickering interference appears above the central gate, and the minister's voice booms over the crowd, bringing everyone back to the task at hand. He greets the warriors, congratulating them for passing the competition to collect warrior certificates. As he announces the top 100 finalists, everyone's attention shifts to the rankings. In first place is a player named Daybreak Shuguang with an impressive 4,999 points. In second is Daybreak Ladao with 3,841 points. Third place goes to none other than Zhang Yu, Luli himself with 3,418 points. Luna, still standing beside him, raises an eyebrow, impressed but not surprised. The list continues. Daybreak Feng Yao in fourth with 3,288 points. Daybreak Du Jian in fifth, with 2,989 points, and Daybreak Dian in 6th with 2,623 points. Then comes 7th place, Huozhou with 2,467 points, much to her delight, no doubt. Luna follows in 8th place with 2,156 points, and while she's satisfied, there's a glimmer in her eye that suggests she's already plotting to do better next time. As the rankings settle in, the mood shifts from awkward to celebratory, at least for most, except maybe for Lu Li, who's still trying to process being declared someone's true destiny by a woman named after a pepper. After glancing at the ranking table, players are taken aback. One of them, eyes wide, expresses disbelief at the fact that first place has 5,000 points. The guy next to him, equally curious, wonders who on earth that could be. Another player points toward the leader of a nearby squad and mentions that the player in question is right there. The first player, nodding knowingly, isn't surprised at all. It's the Daybreak Guild after all. Curiosity piqued, the other guy asks about Daybreak Guild, clearly unfamiliar with the name. The more knowledgeable player looks at him as if he's just confessed to not knowing what bread is. He explains that Daybreak Guild is now the 3rd highest rated union guild on the entire server. Their main members are all professional players from the Daybreak Club, a team that has already claimed several world championship titles in other games before even stepping into this one. With a glint in his eye, he suggests they go say hello. Maybe they could become friends with these legends. The player strokes his chin thoughtfully, finding it unsurprising that Daybreak members are so strong. But what baffles him is the mysterious Zhan Yu. He's in the top 3, and if it weren't for him, the entire top 5 would have been Daybreak Guild members. Meanwhile, Huozhou begins to bother Lu Li, admiring his wonderful name and throwing in a wild request for him to gift her the moon, because why not aim high? Lu Li, visibly uncomfortable, pulls back and politely apologizes, making it clear that love isn't on his current agenda. Off to the side, Afi and Chili are squatting down, whispering about something that seems incredibly important to them, though probably not to anyone else. Just as Lu Li tries to regain some personal space, he spots Feng Ye sitting on a stone, watching him with a steady and intense gaze. Just then, the minister clears his throat and addresses the crowd once more, congratulating the top 100 warriors for proving their courage to the king. As a reward, the system will now issue experience points to each player based on the number of certificates they collected. No sooner does he finish speaking than experience points begin flying out of the portal at the gate, swirling toward the players like glittering beams of light. One player, blinking in surprise as experience rains down, can't believe his luck. He realizes he's going to level up twice in one go. Another player, standing beside him, excitedly declares that he'll jump up 3 levels. Lu Li and his friends aren't left out of the fun either. Luna's level soars to 34, Afi jumps to 32, Lu Li climbs to level 35, Huozhou manages to hit 37, and Chili makes it to 33. All around, players are basking in the glow of their newfound experience points. Once the waves of experience settle, the minister returns to announce that while everyone seems quite pleased with their reward, the selection process is far from over. The players are then instructed to proceed through the portal and head to the second location. As they approach the gate, one player nervously wonders aloud if they even have a choice, while another shrugs and says it doesn't matter. With the experience they've just gained, the next rewards are bound to be even better. As the crowd moves forward, one player calls out to those at the front, urging them to hurry up. In true chaotic fashion, a figure appears in front of them, none other than Goku, complete with a halo over his head. It's just a small glimpse, but any true Dragon Ball fan instantly recognizes the familiar sight. The players at the front quicken their pace, stepping through the portal, eager for whatever comes next. With the magic of teleportation, they are immediately whisked away to another location. As they reappear, they find themselves standing atop massive round columns, divided into 5 larger sections and 1 small one in the center. Gaps stretch between each column, and nearby, a giant clock looms on the wall, ticking ominously as if counting down to their next challenge. This new place feels like the calm before the storm, because of course nothing says next stage like being stranded on top of columns with a giant clock watching over you. Lu Li steps through the portal and finds himself standing on top of one of the towering pillars. As he takes in his new surroundings, more players begin appearing on the other pillars around him, their numbers steadily increasing. A girl on the same pillar as Lu Li grows visibly anxious, glancing around and asking where her teammates have gone. The guy next to her looks equally confused, wondering aloud what kind of place they've ended up in. Another player nearby chimes in, stating the obvious. It looks like they've entered the second stage. But before anyone can properly digest that thought, a bright flash of light appears in the center of each column. From the light, a small man emerges, wearing what can only be described as a paper bag on his head, making him look like a walking grocery order. He smiles at the players almost too cheerfully and introduces himself as their host of this stage. He goes on to explain that being a true warrior requires more than just brute strength. It also requires both wisdom and courage. The first test focused on courage, but now it's time for the second challenge, a test of intelligence. The rules are, according to him, very simple, which instantly makes Luli suspicious. Each group of 5 players will be randomly assigned to play a crime-solving game. There's a killer hidden among the 5 players, and it's their job to uncover the murderer by gathering evidence. After each round, the group must vote to eliminate one player. If they successfully find and eliminate the killer, the surviving players move on. But if the killer manages to survive, they get promoted. Of course, nothing says fun like the pressure of getting the wrong person voted out. The host, clearly enjoying the suspense, then announces that cards will be given out to each player. These cards contain the story and personality of the character they'll be playing, along with key clues to help solve the mystery. He advises everyone to read their cards carefully, as missing a clue could mean getting eliminated. A card appears in Luli's hand, and he lowers his gaze to read it, his mind already spinning with the thought of a reasoning game. After all the players receive their cards, the presenter, now fully embracing his role as the game master, announces that time is short. With a theatrical flair, he declares that the second test has officially begun. To set the stage, he dives into the narrative background of the crime, the case of who killed Warrior X. Warrior X had passed a series of grueling tests and earned the right to face the evil dragon to rescue the princess. In honor of his heroism, the kingdom of Tapini organized a grand banquet to celebrate his success. But when the festivities ended, the warrior was found brutally stabbed to death at the garden fountain. A crime fit for a mystery novel. The investigation quickly narrowed down to 5 suspects, and the players would take on these roles. The foolish boy is Suspect A. He is a fellow comrade of Warrior X. The confused girl is Suspect B. She is the daughter of a minister. Suspect C is Luli himself, who plays the captain of the guard. Suspect D is the girl with glasses. She is the kingdom's leading scholar. Suspect E is a man with a staff, and he is playing the role of a priest. The host, still relishing the drama, points his finger at the group, challenging them to solve the murder. Who among them killed Warrior X, he asks. With a snap of his fingers, he declares that the game has officially begun. Luli, now fully immersed in his role as Suspect C, quickly realizes the gravity of this test. It's no longer just a matter of brute force, it's a battle of wits. The host, eager to kick things off, announces that they will start with Suspect A and move clockwise from there. He reassures the group that if the rules are unclear, he'll guide them through the process as any good game master would, because confusion is only fun for him, apparently. Turning to the first suspect, he instructs them to introduce themselves and explain their relationship with the victim. Suspect A, looking at his card for a moment, introduces himself as Warrior as his teammate. They were practically brothers, having grown up together. The host, naturally skeptical, asks how he plans to prove he's not the murderer. The guy lowers his card, points at himself, and confidently asks, "Does this cheerful, handsome face look like it could lie?" His attempt at charming the crowd gets a raised eyebrow from the host, who's clearly unimpressed. When asked who he suspects, the player hesitates, but then throws a casual glance at the priest, Suspect E, suggesting that someone with that look can't be up to any good. The host wraps up Suspect A's turn and moves on to Suspect B. Suspect B, a girl, greets everyone with a smile, introducing herself as the second daughter of a minister. She recounts how one day she was ambushed by goblins in the forest, and it was Warrior X who heroically saved her. The host, sticking to his interrogation script, asks how she intends to prove she's not the killer. Her face turns red as she admits that after that fateful day, she admired Warrior X. She coughs awkwardly, probably realizing this isn't the time to confess her crush, and adds that she's been in poor health, bedridden for most of the year. How could a fragile girl like her possibly kill Warrior X? The host, sensing the shift in tone, moves to the next crucial question. Who does she suspect? The girl, clearly trying to piece together the clues, pulls out her card and mentions that her father's spies reported something. She points her finger straight at Luli and reveals that the captain of the guard didn't get along with Warrior X. Before Warrior X's death, many people had witnessed the two arguing. In response to the accusation, Luli remains silent, his face unreadable, though it's clear he's carefully considering his words. The host, sensing the suspense, announces that Suspect B's turn is over and calls on Suspect C, Luli himself, to speak next. He instructs Luli to introduce himself and explain his relationship with the victim. Without missing a beat, Luli introduces himself as the captain of the royal guard responsible for the safety of every resident in the kingdom. He adds that he had no personal relationship with Warrior X. The host, ever the investigator, presses on and asks how Luli will prove he's not the murderer. Luli calmly explains that the reason for their argument was simple. He had discovered that Warrior X wasn't the heroic figure he claimed to be. Instead, he was nothing more than a womanizer, chasing fame and fortune. According to Lu Li, someone like that wasn't worthy of rescuing the princess. But loyal to the king's orders, Lu Li insists he wouldn't have killed Warrior X. In fact, he maintained order during the banquet, and all the guests saw him, giving him a solid alibi. Not the worst defense, but definitely not winning any popularity points with Warrior X's fan club. The host, still in full mystery host mode, then asks Lu Li who he suspects. Lu Li, ever observant, turns his gaze to the minister's daughter, Suspect B. He points out that the relationship between her and Warrior X doesn't seem as simple as she described. Why, he wonders aloud, did she hide certain facts during her introduction? The girl gasps dramatically, calling Lu Li cruel for questioning her story and claims she's just reading what's on her backstory card. As if following a script makes it better. Lu Li doesn't seem fazed, but Suspect A, already overwhelmed, agrees that the girl doesn't seem like a bad person. The host, clearly entertained, wraps up Lu Li's turn, announcing that Suspect C's performance is over. He then invites Suspect D to speak, asking her to introduce herself and share her connection to the victim. The girl, Suspect D, introduces herself as a scholar of the kingdom responsible for recording history and biographies by royal order. She explains that she had interviewed Warrior X and documented his biography. The host, as usual, pushes for more, asking how she plans to prove that she isn't the murderer. With an air of logic, she responds, outlining 3 key points. First, she has no motive. According to her, she's the type of person who develops easygoing relationships without conflict or misunderstandings. Ah yes, the social butterfly of scholars. Secondly, she didn't have the opportunity. She spent the entire hour before and after the incident interacting with other scholars at the banquet. Even during restroom trips, someone accompanied her, so there was no window for a sneaky murder. Lastly, she points out that Warrior X was 185 centimeters tall, while she stands at only 145 centimeters. The dagger had been plunged into his body vertically, high enough that it would have been physically impossible for her to reach his chest unless Warrior X was kneeling. But if that were the case, he wouldn't have ended up in the fountain. The host, impressed with her thorough reasoning, asks who she suspects. The girl hesitates, lost in thought. Another suspect comments on her sharp analytical skills, and Suspect B agrees, suggesting that she might even know who the killer is. However, Suspect D coolly adjusts her glasses and admits she doesn't know who the murderer is. Instead, she proposes eliminating the players who aren't contributing much. After all, in her eyes, even teammates who act like deadweight will only drive the rest of the group down. The host, clearly entertained by this no-nonsense approach, announces that Suspect D's turn is over and invites Suspect E, the priest, to speak next. The priest introduces himself as someone responsible for fortune-telling and sacrifices. When asked how he would prove his innocence, the priest recounts a rather mystical defense. He reveals that using his fortune-telling ball the day before, he had predicted the success or failure of Warrior X's mission to rescue the princess. Unfortunately, what he saw was an image of Warrior X stabbed to death in the palace. Upon seeing this, he rushed to the king to report the vision, and the king ordered him to pray for Warrior X and alter his fate. However, despite hurrying to the altar and performing the sacrifice, the warrior's fate was sealed before the blessing could take effect. Talk about bad timing. The host, curious, asks the priest who he suspects. With a thoughtful expression, the priest strokes his chin and muses that the killer is likely someone who managed to evade his fortune-telling abilities, meaning they must be an unusual person, someone clever and skilled at pretending. He adds with a cryptic twist that the person least likely to be a murderer is often the one who is, because apparently murder mysteries thrive on irony. The host, savoring the tension in the air, declares that Suspect E's performance is over. With a dramatic flourish, he announces the conclusion of the first round and instructs everyone to prepare for the voting process. After the countdown, the players are to raise their hands and choose who they believe is the killer. As the countdown begins, everyone tenses up, knowing that one wrong vote could send someone hurtling out of the game. Suspect B wastes no time and points directly at Suspect C, Lu Li. Lu Li, in return, points at Suspect A, while Suspect A, perhaps in an attempt to deflect suspicion, points at Suspect E. However, the remaining players, all other suspects, also point at Suspect A. It's like a game of hot potato, except the potato is blame and Suspect that just got roasted. Confused, Suspect stares at the group, pointing a finger at himself in disbelief. He asks if they really voted for him, insisting that it must be a mistake. After all, he's a good person. But before he can finish his defense, the host, enjoying this far too much, abruptly waves his hand, cutting him off mid-sentence and declaring that Suspect A must leave. Without warning, the part of the column where Suspect A stands dropped sharply, sending him plummeting with a scream. His exit is both sudden and dramatic as the host announces in a matter-of-fact tone that Suspect A was, in fact, a comrade, not the killer. The game continues. Well, that was a plot twist. Goodbye, Suspect A, we hardly knew you. The host of the showman congratulates the remaining players on moving to the second round. As a twist, he explains that their backstory cards will now be supplemented with new hints. However, only 3 of these clues will be true, while the rest are false. With Suspect A eliminated, the host signals for Suspect B to start the next round, moving clockwise once again. Suspect B, the minister's daughter, looks at her card, reading aloud her new clue. The captain of the guard follows the king's orders completely. She adds that while the king had ordered the priest to pray for the warrior's blessing, he also arranged for the captain of the guard to protect Warrior X. Suspect B pauses, her gaze shifting thoughtfully as she adds that something about this clue feels like a lie, because apparently, even in a murder mystery, subtlety is overrated. She muses aloud that the more submissive a dog is outwardly, the harder it bites behind its back, hinting that perhaps outward loyalty isn't all it seems. The host, keeping the momentum, calls on Suspect C, Luli, to share his evidence and thoughts. Luli says his new clue is, according to reports from the guard, after the High Priest E returned from the king's chambers, he stayed at the altar all night and didn't leave. With that in mind, Luli reflects that apart from him, both the scholars and the priest's explanations seem relatively reasonable. Then, without skipping a beat, Luli shifts his gaze to Suspect B, the minister's daughter. He points out that her latest statement completely sidestepped the issue he had previously raised about her concealing certain facts. As a result, it's difficult for him not to continue suspecting her. It's like trying to dodge a spotlight and stepping straight into another one. The host, enjoying every moment of this, moves on and asks Suspect D, the scholar, to present her new evidence and opinions. Adjusting her glasses in a way that suggests she's about to drop a bombshell, the scholar calmly reads her clue. The minister's daughter is obsessed with Warrior X. Oh boy. She explains that the daughter followed him, collected items he used, and even sent him locks of her hair every day. Because nothing says, I admire you like unsolicited hair in the mail. She goes on, pointing her finger directly at Suspect B, revealing that the minister's daughter also sent Warrior X a threatening letter, promising to destroy him if her obsessive feelings weren't reciprocated. Talk about taking things to the next level. Naturally, the minister's daughter is outraged, quickly jumping in to deny the accusations, saying there's no need to slander others. But the scholar doesn't stop there. She continues, revealing that the priest, Suspect E, knew some of these clues beforehand. What's more, after the incident, she requested information from the captain of the guard and discovered that the minister's daughter was the only one who left the banquet early. The plot thickens, and the minister's daughter is looking more and more like a mystery novel villain. The host, clearly amused, now turns to Suspect E, the priest, asking him to share his evidence and thoughts. The priest remains silent for a few moments before closing his eyes dramatically, like someone about to drop wisdom from the heavens. He states that, according to his fortune-telling, the scholar was a capable and reliable assistant to the king. Fortune-telling, the art of being cryptic, while everyone else scrambles for clues. The host, with a sly grin, announces that the second round has ended. After the countdown, it's time for the players to raise their hands and cast their votes. The tension grows as the countdown begins. Suspect B quickly points at Suspect D, while Suspect D, without hesitation, points back at her. The priest, Suspect E, chooses to point at Luli. Suspect C and Luli, staying consistent, points at Suspect B. With the votes counted, Suspect B ends up with the majority against her. Spreading her arms wide in frustration, Suspect B angrily protests, exclaiming that she has been telling the truth all along. Do these people even have brains? She cries. She insists she's not the killer and accuses the group of not knowing how to play the game properly. She jabs her finger toward the girl with glasses, Suspect D, calling her jealous of her beauty. Suspect B claims that the scholar is nothing but a devious fool who stalked her and blackmailed her out of spite. But before she can continue, the floor beneath her disappears and she begins to fall, her final words being a shout that Suspect D should wait because she'll take revenge on her. With Suspect B eliminated, the host cheerfully reveals her identity. She was not the killer, but another comrade. One less suspect and one very loud exit. The game continues. With a gleam in his eye, the host announces that the game has now reached the third and final round. If the killer isn't found in this round, the killer will win the entire game. The rules for this round are different. There is no limit on the order or number of speakers. The remaining players are free to speak, and once 3 players have given their opinions, they will vote. Luli, deep in thought, raises his hand to his face, clearly trying to piece things together. He asks the others if he can first sum up the results of the previous 2 rounds. However, before he can dive in, the girl with glasses, Suspect D, closes her eyes and confidently raises one hand. She calmly tells Luli not to worry. Then, with a sudden flash in her eyes, she opens them and declares that the identity of the killer is now obvious. The remaining suspects turn toward the scholar, Suspect D, as she calmly announces her reasoning. According to the tips she had gathered, Suspect B was innocent. She admits that she deliberately planned to eliminate her in order to flush out the real killer. The remaining suspects grow increasingly wary as she adjusts her glasses, continuing her explanation with confidence. Her actions, she claims, were all part of her strategy to reveal the true murderer, the captain of the royal guard, Lu Li. Lu Li, taken aback, asks what evidence she has to support such a claim. The scholar, ever composed, replies that the evidence lies in her previous performances. She explains that the clues involving him were entirely of her own making. Her goal was to gauge his reaction and see if he would vote against her. In the end, however, he didn't. Before Lu Li can respond, she cuts him off, accusing him of targeting Suspect B simply because he didn't like her. She recalls the look in his eyes and insists that his gaze didn't reveal suspicion or curiosity, just avoidance. Her analysis is sharp as she concludes that his refusal to look at her when she was sending false signals is a dead giveaway. It's as if his subconscious wasn't focused on finding the killer, but rather on hiding and eliminating others. That's why, she says, he couldn't bring himself to meet her eyes. According to her, there can only be one explanation. Lu Li is the killer. She finishes with a flourish, asking if there's anything left that needs explaining, as if the final puzzle piece has just clicked into place. Lu Li listens to the scholar's accusations calmly, then sighs heavily. Without a hint of protest, he sits down on the floor, almost as if giving up, and tells the group they might as well accept her opinion as the truth. He adds that it's time to vote. They shouldn't waste any more time. The girl, Suspect D, is slightly surprised. Is he really not resisting? She wonders. The host, enjoying the suspense, turns to the priest, Suspect E, and asks if he has anything to add. The priest shakes his head, denying the need for further discussion. With that, the host declares that the final round of the performance is complete. The countdown begins, and when it's time to vote, Suspect C, Lu Li, and Suspect E both point at Suspect D. The result is clear. Suspect D receives the most votes. Lu Li grins slightly as the host announces that the game is over and declares that the killer has won. The girl, Suspect D, turns to the priest in indignation, asking what on earth he had done. The priest falls to the floor, realizing his mistake, while she spreads her arms in frustration, exclaiming that she couldn't have made things clearer. Why didn't he vote for Lu Li? Lu Li stands up and speaks calmly, explaining that the answer in a person's heart is stronger than any words spoken aloud. The girl, now confused, asks what he means by this answer in a person's heart. Lu Li continues, saying that from the moment she first spoke in the game, he knew that she would eventually expose him. But luckily for him, she decided to rely on a process of elimination, which meant suspects A and B were taken out first. That left the priest as his only real chance for survival. The priest looks up at Lu Li, nervously realizing the depth of the strategy. Lu Li explains that all of Priest's votes were actually based on the perspective that he shared in his speech in the first round, that is, the least obvious person is likely the most suspicious one. The girl, in shock, looks down, realizing that in the first round, the priest had voted for Suspect A, in the second round for Suspect C, and in the third round for her. And they all were least obvious persons in those rounds. In the final round, Lu Li had pretended to give up in response to her accusations, subtly guiding the priest to make his choice without ever having to force his hand. Devastated, the girl drops to her knees, admitting defeat. Just as she does, the column beneath her and the priest's feet sinks sharply, and the host, clapping his hands with delight, declares that the game is officially over. The losers are eliminated, and the killer, Lu Li, has won. With a flourish, the host praises the entire game as a brilliant display, calling Lu Li's counterattack truly exceptional. Lu Li casually tosses away his backstory card, which revealed his role as the murderer. The card detailed his secret mission, one that came directly from the king. His orders were simple yet brutal. First, he needed to eliminate Warrior X, the one falsely parading around as a hero. After that, his task was to take out Warrior X's comrade, and then the minister's daughter, who had been in cahoots with a spy. Then he would move on to the disguised scholar, also an accomplice, and finally, the priest. Talk about a royal to-do list. As the game concludes, a screen appears above the playing field, and the minister congratulates all the warriors who passed the second selection test. He adds that the king has prepared a large amount of gold as a reward for those who made it through. With the promise of riches, the minister tells them to rest up because the final selection is approaching. Just as the minister finishes his speech, Lu Li's comrades, Afe, Luna, Chili, and of course his self-proclaimed wifey, Huanjiao, all leap onto his column from every direction, excitedly calling out his name. It's like he's become the center of an over-enthusiastic group hug. Luna, clearly relieved and impressed by the outcome, breathes a sigh of relief, saying it's a good thing that they've all advanced together. Despite the enthusiasm from his friends, Luli keeps his eyes closed, remaining silent, lost in his own thoughts. As everyone gathers on the platform, a fence suddenly appears around them, and the minister's voice echoes again, informing the group that they'll be leaving soon. He advises them to hold on tight and follow the safety rules, which, knowing their luck, probably involves surviving yet another wild ride. With that, the columns beneath them shoot upward toward a massive hole in the ceiling. As they rise, rays of sunlight begin to filter through, causing Luli to shield his eyes with his hand. Above, the sky is painted with pink clouds and the sun is already setting, casting a warm glow across the horizon. When the platform finally comes to a stop, they find themselves in a massive arena, surrounded by stands filled with cheering spectators. The roar of applause and joyful shouts fills the air as the crowd waves their hands in excitement. The minister and his assistant are sitting in the center of the arena. They greet the crowd, and a giant screen projects their image into the air. The minister then welcomes everyone in the final stage of the selection with all the seriousness of someone who loves their job a bit too much. He then directs the spectators to look up at the projection where King Tapini, the supreme ruler of Tapini, is about to give his grand speech. Of course, the minister makes sure everyone is ready to shower the king with the warmest applause possible, because nothing says loyalty like enthusiastic clapping. The screen switches to King Tapini, sitting on his throne with a big smile, chuckling as if he's just heard the world's best joke. He thanks everyone for the warm welcome and turns his attention to the warriors, expressing his deep gratitude for their journey and courage. He praises them for surviving the first two stages of the selection and hints that they've proven themselves to be both smart and brave, because clearly dodging death traps and solving murder mysteries is just a normal Tuesday in Tapini. Luli and his friends stand alongside the other players, watching the king's speech with a mix of anticipation and mild exhaustion. The grandeur of the moment is unmistakable, with the king's words echoing through the arena like a dramatic play. But leave it to Ah Fei to lighten the mood. He leans over to Luli and mutters that this whole thing feels suspiciously like a Monday morning assembly, where the principal drones onto the entire school. Gems appear above the king's palm, sparkling like he's about to show off the world's fanciest accessory. He proudly declares that the kingdom of Tapini is unmatched in mining and blacksmithing, a fact he seems quite pleased with. To sweeten the deal for the competition, he announces that the top 3 warriors will be rewarded with legendary inlay stones, perfect for enhancing weapons to legendary status. Meanwhile, the leader of Daybreak Guild turns to his team, telling them that their intel was spot on. These 3 stones are exactly what they need, and they must go to the guild. He makes sure his team understands, and like good soldiers, they all nod in agreement as if he's just told them to capture the Holy Grail. At this moment, Ah Fei, ever the curious one, turns to Luli with a puzzled look and asks what exactly these inlay stones are for, and if these stones really as valuable as it sounds. Luli, always the knowledgeable one, explains that the inlay stone is extremely rare. When embedded into a weapon, it grants the wielder a special skill. He raises his hand to his face, lost in thought, realizing that these stones are typically meant for players at level 50. He wonders, did the game developers just hit the fast-forward button on loot drops? I hope that you liked today's video, and if you did, hit that like button as today's goal is 1,500 likes. Comment below for the next part. Also, consider subscribing with the notification bell on to get notified as soon as a new video drops onto the channel. You can also join the channel to support me financially and watch videos before public release. I'll meet you in the next video. Until then, thanks for watching.